Hello everyone, I'm Professor Thomas Turner and I'm 101 years old. Today I'm here to share something very personal, something I've lived through and learned from over my long life. That something is addiction, how it crept into my life, how it impacted me, and how education helped me find a way out. I'm here to share my story in hopes that it will inspire those who are struggling, and to show that no matter how difficult life gets, there is always hope for recovery. In my younger years, I thought I had control over my life. I was ambitious, driven by the desire to make a difference, to be respected in my field. But what I didn't realize at the time was that life has a way of pushing us to our limits, and sometimes we don't know how to cope. The pressures of being a young academic, trying to build a career, and dealing with personal struggles, it all became overwhelming. And like many, I turned to something I thought would provide relief. At first it was just a drink here and there, a little something to ease the stress after long days of teaching. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. But over time it became a pattern. What started as an occasional escape turned into a crutch I leaned on more and more. I began to use alcohol and drugs as a way to numb the pressure I was feeling. It seemed harmless at first, but it was insidious. One moment of relief turned into a habit I couldn't break. I didn't recognize the signs at first. I thought I was still in control. But addiction is sneaky. It doesn't announce itself. It starts with small steps, then it takes hold, and before you know it, you've lost something important. I had lost control of my life, and I didn't even realize it. But that realization didn't come until much later. That's the truth about addiction. It doesn't just affect you. It affects everyone around you. It wasn't just my body that was suffering. It was my spirit, my relationships, and my sense of purpose. And it took hitting rock bottom to truly understand the depth of what I was going through. You know, it wasn't easy to admit to myself that I had lost control. For years, I thought I could manage my life, balance my work, my responsibilities, and still hide the fact that I was struggling with addiction. But the truth is, I wasn't just hiding it from others. I was hiding it from myself. It wasn't until I reached the point where everything began to fall apart that I had to face it head on. The turning point came one night. I had just finished a long day of lectures, and instead of feeling accomplished, I felt drained, empty. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. I went back to my apartment and reached for the bottle, but this time something was different. I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. I realized then that I had become a stranger to myself. I had allowed addiction to dictate who I was. For so long I'd told myself it was just a phase, just a coping mechanism, but in that moment I knew it wasn't. I had become consumed by it. That's when I understood. I needed to make a change. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. I had to face the truth, no matter how hard it was. The hardest part was admitting that I needed help. For so long I thought I could do it alone, but I was wrong. That night I made the decision to reach out. It wasn't easy. But I knew that if I didn't take that first step, I might never get the chance to change. Admitting I needed help was the first act of strength I had shown in years. I remember the moment I decided to turn my life around. It wasn't just about stopping the destructive habits I'd fallen into. It was about rebuilding myself from the inside out. I had spent so many years lecturing on subjects I was passionate about, but I realized I had never taken the time to truly educate myself about the psychological and emotional roots of addiction. And that's when I knew education would be my way out. I began reading everything I could find about addiction: the biology, the psychology, the neuroscience behind it. I studied recovery methods, the stories of others who had overcome similar struggles. It was through this process of self-education that I finally started to understand what had been happening to me. I began to see the connection between my thoughts, my emotions, and my choices. Education gave me a new lens to view my life. It wasn't just about memorizing facts anymore. It was about learning to understand myself, my patterns, my triggers, and my weaknesses. I started to reframe my thinking, to replace the negative beliefs I'd carried for so long with healthier, more empowering ones. And that was the beginning of my healing. You see, education isn't just for the classroom. It's a lifelong process of learning, not just facts and figures, but learning about yourself, about the world, and about how you can make better choices. It was through learning that I found the strength to break free from the chains of addiction. And to this day, I continue to learn, to grow, and to share that knowledge with others. After admitting that I needed help, I knew I had to take a step that many overlook: learning about myself. Recovery isn't just about stopping the harmful habits. It's about understanding why we fell into them in the first place. It's about education, not just in the academic sense, but in understanding the deeper layers of our behavior, our emotions, and how we can heal. I spent hours reading, studying not just addiction, but also how the mind works, how trauma shapes our actions, and how our habits can be rewired. The more I learned, the more I understood that addiction isn't just a physical dependency. It's a complex web of psychological, emotional, and social factors. Education gave me the insight to break it down and finally see the root of my struggles. And then I realized that it was through education that I could rebuild myself. I didn't just want to stop using substances. I wanted to understand why I turned to them in the first place. I needed to understand my triggers, my thought patterns, and how I could replace the old behaviors with healthier ones. This process of self-education was liberating. It wasn't about seeking perfection, but about seeking understanding, about finding the tools to heal. And that's what I've come to believe, that education is empowerment. It's not just about knowledge, but about gaining the tools to take control of your life. It gave me the strength to confront my addiction, to understand it, and to ultimately overcome it. It's a tool for healing, and it's one that I believe we all need, especially when it comes to our mental and emotional well-being. As I moved further along in my recovery, something unexpected happened. I realized that helping others was just as important as helping myself. You see, teaching has always been my passion, not just academic subjects, but the act of sharing knowledge and guiding others. It's what gave me purpose in life, even during my darkest times. And through that, I learned something profound. Healing isn't a solitary act. It's about connecting with others and lifting them up as you go along. I began to integrate my own experiences with addiction into my lectures, but not in the way I thought. I wasn't teaching the science of addiction. I was teaching about resilience, understanding oneself, and the strength to overcome life's obstacles. I started holding informal discussions with students, talking about mental health, addiction, and how education is not just about getting a degree, but about understanding life. These conversations changed me. They reminded me of why I became a teacher in the first place, to make a difference. Teaching became my therapy. The more I helped others, the more I helped myself. It was through listening to their struggles, guiding them through their own obstacles, and offering my perspective that I found a deep sense of healing. And here's the lesson. When you share your experiences, your struggles, your triumphs, your lessons, you create a community of growth. You don't have to do it alone, and neither does anyone else. I believe that we heal by helping others. As I guided my students, I was reminded of the strength and resilience that lies in each of us. Teaching others about recovery wasn't just about giving them answers. It was about giving them the confidence to find their own path. And in doing so, I found mine. If there's one thing I've learned in my 101 years, it's that life is full of challenges, and the key to overcoming them lies in how we respond to those challenges. Addiction wasn't just a struggle with substances for me. It was a fight to find myself again, to reclaim my power. But through that journey, I've discovered some life-changing truths that I want to share with you. First and foremost, admitting that you need help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. I spent so many years thinking I could handle everything on my own, but the moment I realized I couldn't was the moment my recovery began. We are not meant to do everything alone. Reaching out for support doesn't make you less capable. It makes you brave enough to take control of your life. Second, recovery is a journey, not a destination. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about learning, growing, and evolving. Every day is a step forward, no matter how small. It's about accepting that setbacks are part of the process. What matters is that you keep going. It's the persistence, the resilience that defines you, not the mistakes along the way. Third, never underestimate the power of education. It doesn't have to be formal schooling. It can be the education you seek for your own mental and emotional well-being. Learning about addiction, understanding the psychological and emotional patterns that led me to it, and how to break free, changed my life. Knowledge is the tool that empowers us to change our lives. And lastly, never stop learning. The moment you stop trying to grow, to improve, is the moment you begin to stagnate. Whether it's learning more about your own mind, about the world around you, or about how to help others, education is a lifelong pursuit. I learned that the more I shared my knowledge and experiences, the more I healed. The act of giving back, of sharing what I had learned, kept me grounded and motivated to keep moving forward. So what have I learned? Recovery isn't easy, but it's worth it. Education is the key to changing your life, and helping others is a vital part of healing. If you take anything away from my story, let it be this. It's never too late to turn things around. You can start again. You can heal. You can rise, no matter how far you've fallen. I've lived a long life and I've seen a lot. But if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that no matter how far you've fallen, you can always rise again. Recovery is possible, and education is the key. So don't ever give up. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep living. It's never too late to change your life.